Polygon Wood is a place that we return to year after year. In 2017 we found a water bottle and a liniment bottle beneath the soil of an upturned tree which had probably not seen the light of day in over 100 years. Items and remnants of the war still litter the ground today. Polygon Wood was the fifth major battle by the British Army during the Third Battle of Ypres, later known as Passchendaele. It was a highly significant battle for Anzac forces. Polygon Wood was a significant landmark in the Ypres Salient battlefield. It had been fought over throughout the war, and the trees had all been but destroyed by shell fire. The Germans recognised its importance, and in 1916-17 they fortified the wood with multiple concrete blockhouses and thick tangles of barbed wire. The Battle of Polygon Wood began at 5:50 a.m. on the 26th of September. 7 divisions took part, including the 4th and 5th Australian Divisions, who attacked German lines from just south of the village of Zonnebeek to Polygon Wood. At the centre of Polygon Wood was a dominating mound called the Butte, built by the Belgian military as a firing range before the war. It had been fortified by the Germans and was used as an observation post. Resistance was heavy, but Anzac soldiers took the Butte and had successfully secured the wood by the end of the day. So I just want to read this out. So this is in memory of Private William Pegram, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, regimental number 1578, and he was married and he was 35 years old, and his next of kin was his wife, and he lived in Charlcote Street, Dulwich Hill, New South Wales. Ironically, we come from North Wales in Britain, so it's kind of links with names everywhere. He enlisted on the 9th of April 1915, and he was a private, and his unit was 18th Battalion 1st Reinforcement, and they left Sydney on the 12th of May 1915, and he joined 53rd Battalion, and he was killed in action on the 26th of September 1917 at Polygon Wood, which is where we're standing now. There is no burial for him like many others, but he's commemorated on Manning Gate panel number 29, and someone has given their address here, email address, and it's in honour of his great-grandfather. So I'm going to send you an email with a link to this so that you know that your grandfather's been remembered by everybody, and we're all grateful for the lives and the sacrifices that were given. So I'll place this back here so that others can read it as well. Fighting continued until the 3rd of October, with German forces landing numerous unsuccessful counter-attacks. An important factor in the success was clear weather, which allowed the Royal Flying Corps to provide support. British fighter aircraft fought with their German counterparts above no man's land, providing cover for observation aircraft to direct the artillery and support the soldiers on the ground. Losses were heavy. Total British losses were 15,375 killed and wounded. Anzac losses were 5,770 killed and wounded, and German losses amounted to 13,500 killed or wounded. After the war, the 5th Australian Division built its divisional memorial on the Butte in Polygon Wood. The towering obelisk overlooks Butte Cemetery, where more than 650 Anzac soldiers are commemorated, the majority unknown. On the Manning Gate Memorial, 950 members of the Anzac forces who died during the Battle of Polygon Wood are commemorated and have no known grave. When I see the same surname as myself, I try to find out a little bit about the person I'm viewing on the panel. It was sad to know that on this day 509 soldiers had died on the 27th of the 12th, 1917, which was the same day as 32302 Private Henry Crook, 3rd Battalion, Auckland Regiment, New Zealand Expeditionary Force. He was the son of Hannah Crook of Kaiwara, Wellington, New Zealand. I'd like to read you some of the story of the battle for Polygon Wood. Australians first contributed to the Third Battle of Ypres in September 1917 when they attacked along the Menin Road at Polygon Wood. Named for its unusual shape, the wood had been the site of the Ypres rifle range before the war and even contained a racecourse. By 1917, 3 years of constant bombardment had reduced the wood to shattered stumps and pulverized the racecourse beyond recognition. The most prominent feature of the area was the Butts, a rough mound that was originally the backdrop of the rifle range and had been turned by the Germans into a fortress, bristling with machine guns and honeycombed by dugouts, tunnels and barbed wire entanglements. The Australian 4th and 5th Divisions attacked Polygon Wood along a 2,000-metre front on the morning of the 26th of September 1917. This was the 5th Division's first major engagement since it had been mauled at Fromelles more than a year earlier, and it was keen to prove its worth to its sister divisions. In this attack, the 5th Division would need all the fighting spirit it could muster. To reach its objectives, would have to advance through the heart of the wood and overcome dozens of pillboxes and machine gun emplacements before tackling the Butts itself. Fortunately, the 5th, a remarkable change had to take place in British tactics by the time of the attack. The powerful but imprecise artillery bombardments that had failed them so monumentally at Fromelles had been replaced by the well-orchestrated, creeping barrage, a half-concentrated wall of artillery fire that would advance in stages as the troops attacked. On the 26th of September, the coordination of the artillery approached. It was the most perfect that had ever protected Australian troops and roared ahead. The Australians swept through the wood as the battalions advanced in rows, and the line of men would ripple as fire from the German strongpoint found its mark, before an organised rush would overcome the position. Several pillboxes were taken by acts of individual dash, and heavy resistance expected from the defender at the Butts had never materialised. At the first sight of the advancing 53rd Battalion, the Germans fled. After sightseeing, we like to recount the day and enjoy a hot meal and a drink amongst friends and owner Johan van der Velde at the Café de Drave, which is situated at the entrance of the wood. It has an extensive museum of war relics from Polygon Wood and surrounding areas. Bedford House Cemetery is one of our must-go places as we pay our respects to Tracy's great-grandfather, Private Richard Evans. He was in the 1st and 6th Battalion, and on the day of his death, he and his fellow soldiers had been ordered to help trench repairs in the Sanctuary Wood. They'd marched from Poperinghe that evening, which was about 12 kilometres, and began trench repairs. On completion they attempted to return, but had either been sighted or heard, and were fired upon by German artillery. A direct hit killed 9 and injured 21. Private Evans, along with others, were brought to an aid station known as the Chateau, and 43rd Field Ambulance treated him for his wounds, but were unsuccessful. The name Tyne Cot is said to come from the Northumberland Fusiliers, seeing a resemblance between the many German concrete pillboxes on this site and typical Tyneside workers' cottages, Tyne Cots. The cemetery lies on a broad rise in the landscape which overlooks the surrounding countryside. As such, the location was strategically important to both sides fighting in the area. The concrete bunkers, which still stand in various parts of the cemetery, were part of a fortified position on the German Flandern Stellung, which played an important tactical role during the Battle of Passchendaele in 1917. On the 4th of October 1917, an area where Tyne Cot Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery now located was captured by the 3rd Australian Division and the New Zealand Division, and 2 days later a cemetery for the British and Canadian war dead was begun. The cemetery was recaptured by the German forces on the 13th of April 1918 and was finally liberated by the Belgian forces on the 28th of September. After an armistice in November 1918, the cemetery was greatly enlarged for its original 340 graves by concentrating the graves from the surrounding battlefields, smaller cemeteries nearby and from Langemark. Tyne Cot is the largest Commonwealth War cemetery on the Western Front. It has 11,953 burials and 34,991 names recorded on panels arranged by regiment and then by rank. The cemetery grounds were assigned to the United Kingdom in perpetuity by King Albert of Belgium in recognition of the sacrifices made by the British Empire in the defence and liberation of Belgium during World War I. The cemetery was designed by Sir Herbert Baker. The sodden clay and puddles highlighted with devastating accuracy the misery that must have gone on in trench warfare during World War I. In 1992, a group of amateur archaeologists known as the Diggers first discovered the remains of an original British trench between 1998 and the year 2000. They spent many hours digging and examining the trench, which had tunnelled dugouts. At the time, major construction work for new buildings in Ypres, the northern industrial zone, was being carried out. In addition to many artefacts, the diggers discovered the remains of 155 First World War soldiers. The casualties they discovered were British, French and German, lost in battle and never recovered for 70 years. The project to unearth the trench section featured in a BBC television documentary called The Forgotten Battlefield. The soldiers' remains and items found during the dig were passed over to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, the German War Graves Commission and the French Embassy. The museums in Flanders Fields in Ypres and the Hoog Crater Museum on Menin Road received some of the artefacts for their archive collections. The remains of 155 soldiers were reburied with full military honours in military cemeteries. Many of the British casualties discovered here were from an action by the British launched against the German positions on the 6th of July 1915. The British troops involved in the action were of the 11th Brigade of the British 4th Division. The losses to the British and German troops were about 600 in total. On the last day of July 1917, the Third Battle of Ypres was launched by the British Army in the Ypres Salient. British soldiers of the 38th Welsh Division were in this location east of Ypres on the Ypres Canal at the start of the offensive. On their left was the Guards Division and on their right was the 51st Division. The 38th Welsh launched its attack from the sector and on the northern flank of the offensive, making a successful advance of about 4,000 yards as far as Langemarck village by the end of the day. This turned out to be the first in a number of battles to reach the Passchendaele Ridge and was to become known as the Battle of Pilkem Ridge. The trench is slowly falling into disrepair and funds are desperately needed to re-establish its footings and make it secure again. We did return to the Yorkshire Trench in 2022 and the entrances to the dugouts are almost completely underwater now. The lights don't work to view the dugout entrance and the duckboard is deteriorating, so care must be taken when walking throughout the trench system. I do hope that they manage to raise the funds to carry out much needed repairs and preserve the trench for generations to come.
No name for soldiers.
Yeah. George Stewart. Incredible.
Yeah. So Frederick. So this name are linked with somebody. So my name is there with soldiers that they the statue that was made.
Yeah.
So all soldiers killed them only in Flanders. Only Flanders.
A sea of little orange clay sculptures as far as the eye can see. From far away, the installation looks like a carpet. A closer look reveals hundreds of thousands of separate little sculptures. They symbolise figures mourning the dead, bent over in grief. Carved on the metal tags aren't only the names of the dead, but also the names of those who formed the particular clay sculpture. In this way, the past is connected to the present. The name tags were supposed to be attached to the figurines, but in the end were placed in the large glass tank that was viewed earlier, and somewhere in the tank was the name tag Private Richard Evans, and on the reverse was the name of the person who made a sculpture in his memory. With a total of 600,000 clay sculptures, the Belgian town of Ypres, the city's official name, or Ypres by the soldiers who served there, commemorates the victims of World War I who died there. Belgian artist Koen van Mechelen, sorry if I don't get that pronunciation correct, entitled this monumental installation, "Coming World, Remember Me." It took Koen and tens of thousands of people in art studios in numerous countries 4 years to complete, the length of World War I. Many of the tiny sculptures were unfortunately removed by collectors and enthusiasts, and soon the field was emptied, but many did make their way to museums and are on display for visitors to see. Johann presented one to Tracy on behalf of his family and friends to give thanks for the sacrifice of Tracy's great-grandfather, Private Richard Evans. It stands proudly in our lounge to remind us of Ypres and of the friends that we made there. John Hunter was the eldest of 7 sons from Queensland. 25-year-old Jim wanted to join the military to fight in Europe. He volunteered on the 23rd of October 1916. As older brother and close friend, John thought it was his duty to protect his younger brother and volunteered as well 2 days later. John and Jim left Sydney and sailed aboard the Ayrshire on the 24th of January 1917. They were drafted to the 49th Battalion, a unit that consisted of mostly Queenslanders, and they sailed to Egypt to complete their training and were taken to France nearly a year later. Jim was quickly promoted to Lance Corporal, but was satisfied with the rank of private if he could stay with his elder brother John. At dawn they would attack, but just before the battle started, John was sent out to investigate a piece of shiny metal in no man's land. As John crawled out, he was thrown back by an explosion by an artillery shell and was severely wounded. He managed to crawl back to his own trenches, and on the morning of the September 26, 1917, Jack died in Jim's arms before the Battle of Polygon Wood would commence. John Hunter was listed on the Meningate Memorial along with the rest of the missing in 1927. However, roadworks to lay a new gas pipeline in the hamlet of Westhook in 2006, Tom Heyman, operating the machine, suddenly stopped digging and called Johan van der Velde, an amateur archaeologist. Tom was convinced that he'd found the human remains just beside the road and immediately linked them to the battlefield of what Westhook once was. Johan rushed over and could only confirm that these remains had been those of World War I soldiers. He contacted the police and the mayor of Zonnebeek and got the green light to gather a team and start excavating as soon as possible. After clearing the first grave, they noticed another grave next to the first one, and then another, and then another. In total, 5 Australian soldiers were exhumed. The last Australian body, however, was to make an everlasting impression on all who were involved. The 5th body was that of Australian Private John Hunter. In all, 3 of the 5 soldiers would be identified by DNA research. The last man had not been buried like the others. Someone had taken great care in laying this body to rest. When Johan uncovered the soldier's head, which was wrapped in his ground sheet, Johan looked straight into the soldier's eyes, and with the sunlight at the right angle, Johan could clearly see the eye colour, which was blue. It was an instant moment, but it lasted a lifetime for Johan, and with this he began to create the Brothers Memorial, which officially opens on its anniversary of the Battle of Polygon Wood on the 26th of September 2022. It has been a long time coming, but will be there for generations to come. 90 years after his death, John was reburied with full military honour at the Butts New British Cemetery in Polygon Wood, together with the other 4 soldiers that were exhumed by Johan van der Velde and his team in 2006. In 1916, the Germans built bunkers when they occupied here. And when it was taken back, the Australians, it was the 56th Australian Battalion, they named this bunker down here, they named it Scott Post, after one of their commanders. Thank you for that. Photo bombed by a bee. Okay. Yeah, it kind of threw me a bit, that. So we'll go and have a look at the bunker. What it did say on there, before I sidetracked, was they used to, obviously they found lots of ammunitions in the woods after the war, and they would stick the ammunitions and they would detonate them, because they thought this was a safe area to get rid of a lot of the explosives. So when you do look at the bunker, you'll see that it's starting to crack, and it was from the pressure. So I shall spin the camera around so you can have a look at it now. And there you can see she's very heavily peppered with the bullets. There, look. Across there. And the pressure that's blown this wall. Some fair constructions though. Oh, look at that. Wow. Monster. They've left the construction because there's bats living in here. I don't know if we can see any. Oh, there we go. Look. Nothing there. See there? That's where they crawled in and sleep. It's a very solemn drip, and did you hear that? It says that they've left these because bats use them. If you just look there, you can see just inside there. Look.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The buttons.
Mm. Hello, a blast.